This week on Supercars Talk, TCR fans rejoice. You're finally going to have crowds at one of your events. The big news this week, Nick Percat changed his mind and rang up Brad Jones and said, look, I'm just not feeling it anymore. I've had this big dollar offer from another team that is currently winning races and I don't want to drive with you anymore. That's probably what he should have said. Apparently he rang up Brad and said, I'm not feeling this anymore. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, blah, 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 blah. Nice little story, but I don't think it's really the truth. The actual big news this week, Andre Heimgartner shook down his new Mustang. Not really the big news this week, but a little bit interesting considering the news that has come out recently. And I do wonder how come these teams... Bryce Fullwood was testing as well during the week. I assume one of the rookie test days that they get. Obviously, the rookies now... It counts for 2 years. When you're a rookie, you get the couple of extra test days over 2 years. Victoria's in lockdown. Most of us aren't supposed to be going to work, if you can work from home, blah, 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 and all that. And they got to go testing at Winton. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it just seems a little bit backwards with everything that's going on. But then again, the Queensland teams can go and do whatever the hell they want. So, maybe there's a bit of a concession there. The actual big news this week, there's going to be a 6-day Supercars Superfest or something like that at Bathurst. So from Tuesday to Sunday will be Bathurst this year. And they have got one hell of a lineup over the weekend. Now, this is the lineup, and this is the order that they were mentioned in. This wasn't just on the Supercars website. This has been around a few places. Interesting the way they word, what order the racing's been put in. So Supercars is the main event, the 1000, top 10 shootout, all of that kind of stuff. I don't think their schedule is going to be affected at all. Super 2 is the main support act over the weekend. I think they're going to have the, main billing on the Saturday afternoon. Porsche Carrera Cup, number 3. Interesting. TCR gets 4th in line. S5000, Touring Car Masters, GT World Challenge, V8 Super Utes above the TranzAms and Toyota 86. I'd agree with most of those, except probably the Super Utes being above the TranzAms and that. Although the Super Utes have looked a lot better since they have had the V8 put in them and lowered a bit. I would have probably lowered them a bit further and put bigger wheels in them, but that's a story for another day. A lot of comments I saw about, Repco getting their knickers in a twist because of Supercheap getting, co-naming rights or whatever the hell's going to happen with it there. I think Supercheap's definitely the big winner out of all of this, considering they've probably paid like $50 to sponsor the TCR series for the year, and they're going to be able to put, their big shop and whatever at Bathurst. If there is going to be crowds and if that kind of thing does happen this year, they'll be able to do all of that activation stuff that they do really well. Plus also they've got that, it is a 888 run car, so the budget for it would probably be higher than if you were with any other team in the field running a wildcard. But really that car is going to garner so much attention at Bathurst with the fact that you've got Craig Lowndes and Jamie Whincup's replacement driving in. You don't have Craig Lowndes, you have Russell Ingall. What was I thinking there? You've got one of the biggest names, kind of coming back. It's a competitive car. It's going to be, at worst, it's probably going to be mid-pack because Feeney's going to qualify it quite well. And Ingall's not going to be on the top step of the pace, but he'll probably be enough to run around that kind of mid-pack of the co-drivers. So they're not going to have any trouble. That's going to be on TV all day. Super Cheap's going to get a lot of coverage over the weekend, and kind of, come over the top of the fact that Repco has taken over naming rights sponsorship of the whole thing. The big questions with an event like this, obviously, as I had a little bit of a dig earlier, TCR getting mentioned fourth, but where do they fit into the whole schedule? Will they have their 500 kilometre race that they were planning? I don't think they will. Will they have like a feature race on the Saturday afternoon, say after the top 10 shootout and that, or will that still be, a Super 2 kind of event? Will TCR have a smaller race on the Sunday morning? They are also talking about starting the Supercars at least midday to then, because it being later on in the year and that, more light, whatever, they can run it later into the day, more into that, the peak ratings time on a night where you've got the most kind of eyeballs there to watch the finish of the race. So you start it later, you're more chance of running into that kind of, 6 p.m. news time. And that also gives more time in the morning to say, you could squeeze in an hour and a half, feature TCR race, or even have, a 45-minute TCR or a 45-minute Super 2 race on the morning, rather than, it's kind of, in previous you'd have Supercars, 20-minute practice session, which never seems like enough. And then, you might have 8-lap Porsche race or something and 6 laps of the Touring Car Masters, which inevitably one of them crashes or blows an engine or something, and they trundle around under the pace car for a couple of laps, and then it goes time certain. So that will be, how they have got 6 days to pack in, all the practice and qualifying and whatnot. I would say that the Supercars will be their typical Thursday to Sunday. Their schedule will be, kind of what it is. Everyone else works in around them. Then the double duties, guys like, say, Chaz Mostert, who's leading the TCR Championship. Will he race in TCR? He's also been racing in the GT World Challenge. Shane Van Gisbergen's been racing in there as well. Will those guys still do that, or will it just be like, no, you've got to focus on the 1000. That's what you're doing for the weekend. A couple of little things to finish off this week. It's been confirmed Winton is not going to happen. Surprise, surprise. It's looking increasingly likely. It could be 5-6 weeks of racing right at the end of the year. 2 weeks, the start of November in Queensland, and then the teams travel down to New South Wales straight after that, and 2 rounds at Sydney Motorsport Park, and then possibly a straight into Bathurst week, more than likely a week gap in between Sydney Motorsport Park and Bathurst. So it kind of gets done, 5 weekends of racing over 6 weeks. And then the teams are free to, go their separate ways, do their quarantine. Then everyone, into a Christmas break with the quarantine all done and dusted, and you can go and spend Christmas with your family. The other little bit, it's looking like Matt Payne, he will have enough points to get a super license. The problem is he won't have started enough Super 2 races to get his super license. Now, I saw a lot of comments on the internet, the usual kind of, stupid comments are, the rules are in place so that we don't have people, dispensation, they shouldn't get it, blah, 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 and whatever. Well, under those kind of things, so what happens, Simona Di Silvestro comes across. So you go, no, you haven't got the points. You've got to go and do 6 Super 2 races because you haven't done that to qualify. Things like that, this is why the idea of the points is so that you don't get people who aren't, in a position to be able to drive the cars. If you look back in history, someone like Shane Van Gisbergen probably didn't have the points or enough, I don't think he actually did any Super 2 races before he started in the main game, but he did pretty well, let's say that. So that the idea is, to stop people who really haven't got the experience. It's not to stop people, this is why you can apply for a dispensation, because, sometimes there is genuine circumstances where you could be good enough to drive the car, but you've taken a bit of a left of field approach to get there. The last little thing I wanted to cover off this week, the Car of the Future prototypes that Supercars built back in 2012. I think they were running around a lot before the introduction. There was a Commodore and a Falcon. They are for sale if anyone wants to buy them. A piece of history. Quite a few famous names drove them. I think Jack Perkins and Scott McLaughlin actually did a lot of the test driving in those cars. Most of the main guys had a spin in them at some point. What I found interesting though, when they were first built and released, the guys who were in the photos. Now, no surprising, Garth Tander was stood next to the Commodore. Stored of that. Rick Kelly was the other bloke to be stood with the Commodore, which of course they then shortly after that announced that they were going to bring the Nissan and the Altima into the series. So there. And then with the Ford was Steve Johnson. Makes sense. The most iconic Ford the son of the most iconic Ford guy, I suppose, in history. But Shane Van Gisbergen was stood with him, which, funnily enough, he then was supposed to actually drive a Mercedes and ended up in a Commodore. So it's a bit of a roundabout. I just thought that was a little bit of a twist there when they were advertising it, and how much things kind of changed at that point in what was a relative short period of time. So anyway, on that note, I'm still Dave, and I'll catch you later.